I mention madness everywhere. As you know, the average man, woman or child can't leave Melbourne, but 3 flights did leave yesterday for the Gold Coast. The AFL's final exodus with the Premiership Cup, the Brownlow Medal, the Brownlow Votes, the Norm Smith Medal, all for Queensland. Wives, husbands, friends, the lot of them. The grand final at the Gabba on October 24. Queensland will be rewarded for its role in saving the season. I approve of the AFL players going to Queensland. So should everybody else be able to go to Queensland. As one of my correspondents has said, and I quote, footy final equals essential service. Pregnant mother equals a threat to Queenslanders. The difference is one generates income for the government. More of that in a moment. But Melbourne, the home of Australian football, will not host the grand final for the first time ever. And I know Anastasia Palaszczuk has worked hard to accommodate the AFL. Well, I wish, Anastasia, you'd worked just as hard to accommodate sick children, distraught mothers, desperate fathers and farmers. And this is where the rubber hits the road. Earlier today, we learnt from the Federal Treasurer that Australia's economy contracted by 7% during the June quarter. It's not a recession, it is a catastrophe. This is the worst economic blow since World War II. The largest fall in GDP, 7%, since records began in 1959. I don't think anyone in the government has any clue how we get out of this. The only thing we know is they put us here. We've never seen anything even remotely close to this before. In that global financial crisis, the GDP fell by 0.5%. This is 7%. And the Treasurer will announce a budget deficit sometime this month of $85.8 billion, which we're told will more than double next year to more than $184 billion. Some are saying the real jobless number could reach 18%. This was avoidable. The response to this coronavirus has been prompted by alarmist chief medical officers who've ignored international evidence, politicians who refuse to lead but would rather follow, and hysterical modelling, which has now been totally discredited. Scott Morrison is asking premiers to commit to making Australia as normal as possible by Christmas. I think the notion of normality has long since passed. How can things be normal when we learn that JobKeeper wage subsidies will now be in place until next March, and the total cost of JobKeeper has now been estimated at $101 billion. And the Treasurer proudly announced that JobKeeper was supporting more than 3.5 million Australian workers and 1 million Australian businesses. Now, this stuff, I can tell you, can't go on. As I said months ago at Adam Crichton, we had a responsibility to look after the vulnerable and let the rest get on with their lives. Instead, we now have the Andrews government extending its emergency powers for 6 months, courtesy of political parties that could hardly command a vote at any election. The Reason Party and the Animal Justice Party have supported Daniel Andrews' extension of the state of emergency for 6 months. Andrews' thirst for power and distaste for accountability know no limit. The inquiry into the quarantine fiasco has been told that 99% of the coronavirus cases could be traced to the hotel quarantine farce. Well, this has led to an unprecedented intervention by distinguished medical people across Australia who've written to Premier Andrews expressing deep concern with the management of the coronavirus, saying, and I quote, "The purpose of this letter is to make you aware that not all medical practitioners are in agreement with the Chief Medical Officer and the Victorian Government regarding the most effective way to control this disease." Unquote. Now, the distinguished medical people have said, and I quote, "We believe that an alternative medical response is required that reflects what we know about the spread of the virus, those who have died from it, and the impact that the lockdown restrictions are having on the physical and mental health of the general population." Unquote. Now, the letter details the concerns and recommendations, but the figures are staggering. And this is what I have been saying for months. The letter says, quote, "We're told that since March 2020, 565 Victorian patients have died, either with or from the virus, as at August 31. This compares, it says, with annual Victorian deaths of approximately 10,000 patients with cardiovascular disease and 11,000 with cancer." The letter says, quote, "Accordingly, the COVID-19 deaths are a relatively small proportion of the 114 deaths per day that are normally seen in Victoria. In comparison, since the start of March, COVID-19, they say, has been associated with 3 of the 114 deaths per day." Well, on the line I have Dr. Eamon Matheson, an anaesthetist in private practice at Heidelberg in Melbourne, and he joins us. Doctor, my thanks to you and to your many, many colleagues of great distinction who've signed this letter. Have you had any response from the government?
No, we haven't had any response from the government as yet, unfortunately, Alan, but we hope to hear from them hopefully soon.
You've made the point that in Victoria, you've had 541 fewer deaths this July compared to July last year. Now, I take these figures every day from world authorities, and in the figures today, there have been 663 deaths in Australia, 576 in Victoria. Australia-wide, there are 424 Australians in hospital, but apart from Victoria, only 23. And apart from Victoria, only 6 in intensive care. But you people make the point, and I quote, during 2017 and 2019, influenza resulted in 25 to 35,000 hospital admissions, not 424, and up to 2,500 intensive care admissions across Australia. I mean, how come government don't understand this, Doctor?
Yeah, many of us doctors are really quite perplexed by this. But
I bet.
I think that what we've come to realise with time is that in fighting this COVID phenomenon, we've just created another public health crisis. And it's a silent public health crisis in many ways, but it's not silent to many practicing doctors who are seeing the toll on the health care of our patients and the health of our society day in and day out, and it's growing. And it's a result of the measures taken, which we have said are, we believe, disproportionate and heavy-handed. We think that the approach is too single disease focused, and this sort of many of the approaches tend to seem to defy the basic medical principles. And so we're pointing out that the cost of the treatment or the intervention is actually clearly becoming worse than the condition itself. And this goes against all of our instincts as medical practitioners. When we see this happening, we reassess, we change directions, and we don't keep going down a path where we see the results are more negative than the condition itself. This is basic sort of
I should say to our viewers, there's a stack of distinguished medical people have signed this, and you say, and I quote, the deaths from influenza each and every year are between 3,500 and 4,000, according to the Australia Influenza Specialist Interest Group website and the Bureau of Statistics. And this, Doctor, is despite excellent rates of vaccination. I mean, it is absurd, is it not?
Well, we just want to point out the reality of the situation that we are facing. So there are COVID-19 is a real illness. It has significant effects on a small number of people. But there are many, many, many other medical conditions. And we feel that due to this fixation error, all other medical conditions are being ignored. One of the real dangers of this approach to medicine and to this problem is that all the other medical conditions are being neglected. For example, and I think the big one that the evidence has come out now, and it's very clear, and the regions in Melbourne are reporting this, that there are 30 to 40% decreases in cancer referrals that they've already measured. This is astonishing, and they're predicting a rise not only of late-presenting cancers, but a rise of cancer conditions over the next 12 months. The Lancet just produced a paper in August that said that the UK is expecting an increase of 4,000 deaths from the 4 main cancers due to delayed screening or delayed presentations. And this is primarily coming out of fear. Out of a fear of the population visiting their doctors because they fear that that they'll contract COVID, and their fear is unjustified to the proportion of the risk.
Well, look,
but the real consequences are significant, and they're measurable, and they are there. There will be more deaths from the lockdown and the measures than there ever will be from COVID. Far more deaths. And this is clear. The evidence is there. It needs to be part of the discussion. The people making these decisions, the bureaucrats, the non-clinical doctors, need to hear what we are saying.
Absolutely.
They need to hear what we are experiencing on a daily basis, what our patients are telling us. I was told that you were going to be interviewing some young mums who've had some problems.
Yes.
I got an email yesterday from a GP who deals with lots of young mums and young families. And she was pointing out to me, it hadn't really occurred to me, because we were looking at a lot of the impact on the aged care and the deaths in the nursing home and that sort of aged care resident situation. But she pointed out to me that the impact on young families is extraordinary, and young mums coming home, you know, on their own, without any of the normal supports of families and friends to celebrate the birth of a baby. The difficulty is that the toll that it takes to have a baby anyway in normal circumstances is heavy. I have 3 children. I know my wife really, you know, at times with our third, we were struggling. We needed help. And, you know, the GPs are reporting that they are really struggling. Mental strain on top of the financial strain. The cost to healthcare is, from these lockdowns, is extraordinary. Mental health.
Well, Alan. I know we can talk all night. I understand exactly what you're saying, and we're very grateful for what you doctors have done. And we will keep in touch with you, because we want to know whether Andrews is prepared to answer the concerns that you've raised, bro. Thank you so much.
Alan, can I just say one thing?
Yes.
We're still calling for doctors to sign the petition that we've written.
Right.
We have a website now, which is coviddoctorsnetwork.com. So it's coviddoctorsnetwork.com. If they want to contact us, and if the media want to contact us about this, or even if the government wants to contact us, they can get us through that network.
Good on you.
We can have a discussion. Thanks very much for your time, Alan.
Not at all. Thank you for yours. That's Dr. Eamon Matheson.